Hi guys, my name is Mick McCarthy. I am the face behind Goose Customs. I have been building bikes for 20 odd years and I have entered them in many shows in Ireland, and I've entered them in shows in Great Britain as well. The show in Dublin, my trike has won the show in Dublin several times. I have bikes, I have trophies from other shows as well. The reason I'm here is I'm going to go through the stages in building your own bike from your own shed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about picking a bike. I'm going to talk about how the looks and how you visualize that particular bike. Your planning, the time it's going to take you, your budget and getting your parts, the build itself, and finally getting it through an engineer's report. Okay guys, the first on the list that I want to talk to you about is picking your bike. I'm assuming that all of you will have a particular bike that you like, but there are certain bikes that lend themselves easier to certain builds. For example, GS450s, CB450s, small 4-cylinder tubular frame bikes lend themselves very, very well to cafe racers. Old singles or sort of large scrambler type bikes, they lend themselves very, very well to trackers. Again, Harleys and stuff, or Shadows, Dragstars lend themselves very, very well to bobbers or chops or whatever the case may be. So it's very important for you to pick the bike to suit the look that you're going for, rather than buying a bike and then suddenly realizing that I want to build a cafe racer out of a Honda Shadow, which is not, it can work, but it won't look as good as another type of bike, shall we say. The looks of the bike that you're after will depend entirely on the type of bike that you choose, because some bikes will lend themselves very, very well to cafe racers, others will only lend themselves to trackers or to choppers or whatever the case may be. So I'll give you a quick run through the cafe racer because that seems to be the very popular option at the moment. Cafe racers, hump style seat. Some people choose a curved tailpiece. You could have either a twin seat or a solo seat. It depends entirely on yourself. There's massive variations. Front ends can come to either an inverted, which is the upside downy type, or the standard, and you could go for spoke wheels or alloy wheels. There's a massive variation of what you can do. My idea for what I do is I cover the bike completely and I reveal certain sections of the bike, and I decide, well, do I want to keep that or don't I want to keep that, and I walk from that back, and the whole bike then over time reveals itself to me. Okay, so that's my take on it. Now that you've picked your bike and you've decided what you're going to do with it, you need to make up a plan on where to start. First of all, make sure the thing runs. Trust me on this, it's a bloody nightmare. If you don't get this bike running before you start your build, it's going to bring you back a serious amount of grief at the end of it all. Whatever time you have allowed for your budget or for your build, double it, because it's going to take a lot longer, because the dismantling process is the easy part. The build and the reassembly takes a lot of time because you don't want to be damaging parts, you don't want to be damaging paint. So then you go into your budget. Again, whatever budget you had planned for your bike, double it, because it's going to cost you a lot more than what you think it's going to cost you. It's not you might have only paid 5 or 6 or 7 or 1,000 quid for the bike, but it'll cost you twice that at least to build it. So be very, very careful, be very, very aware of that. Right guys, now that you've decided on what you want and you've worked out your rough design as to what you want on your bike, the next most important part is, long before you start dismantling your bike, order up all your parts. Get them all in the door, because what will end up happening is, if you don't, you'll be ordering parts from some other part of the world, and the parts will take time to arrive, and you'll be sitting there looking at your bike and have nothing to do. So it is much, much better for you to decide what you want and order all your parts in advance. So they're sitting on a bench there waiting for you when the bike is started. Now, the build works out, take all the bodywork off the bike. Start with a bare frame, bare engine, and the wheels on the frame. Decide where you're going to put your wiring. That's very, very important. Your wiring, your electrics and everything else. That's probably the most important part, because the essential structure of the bike was the same. It's the things like the battery, the wiring and everything else. You need to figure out where you're going to put them. So that's the most important part, in my opinion, of the build. Right guys, another very important part of the build is if you're doing any frame alterations. Do not attempt to cut a bike frame at home if you don't know what you're doing. The reason being is the geometry on a bike is set at the factory. If you cut the frame, a lot of these frames are spring loaded when they're built. So you cut the frame, it immediately goes out of shape, and only a jig will put it back together again. So you've effectively ruined your bike. The same goes for the back end on the bike. A lot of guys cut them off for cafe racers. That's all well and good as long as they're properly braced. So get a professional welder in. If you're not a professional welder, get a professional welder in to weld it up when you're finished. So that's just a quick note on that. Paint wise, you've loads of options. There's powder coating, there is custom painting, whatever. It's going to be one of the biggest parts of your budget. You're codding yourself if you think it's not, because it is. Because the amount of work, like, it's not a simple matter of going down to your local paint guy and saying, tell him throw a bit of black on it or throw a bit of green on it or whatever. It doesn't work that way. If you want your bike to look its best, the paint work is what reflects this. So that's the most important part. So save a good chunk of your budget to fit for the finished product, because that's what will set your build apart from everybody else's. The difference between your bike and another bike will be the level of finish that you put into it. You can't go to, well, you can do if you want to, but going through all the trouble of building your bike, putting a really nice paint job on it, and putting dirty old rusty nuts and bolts on it from the original build back onto it is not going to set your... They're the one thing, in actual fact, you could have the best paint job in the world and you put rusty nuts and bolts back on the bike, it'll ruin it. It'll completely... So take a bit of time and get yourself some nice stainless steel fasteners, or get yourself some nice coloured aluminium bolts, but make sure that whatever bolts you get are proper for that particular part of the bike. You don't get cheap soft bolts to put in. The other thing I want to talk to you about is things like wheel bearings. If you're going to get your wheels painted, if you've got an old bike, change the wheel bearings. It doesn't matter if they feel good or whatever, the wheel bearings are 20 quid. Pull them out, put new ones in. Back, front, do the same with fork seals. If the bike has been lying idle for any length of time, the fork seals, they might look perfect now, but 20 miles down the road, after you've rebuilt your new bike, your fork seals are going to start leaking. So put new fork seals in. Same applies with your brake caliper seals. To get your brakes completely rebuilt. And as you're making a really nice cafe racer build, change up your old rubber hoses and put stainless braided hoses in there. It makes a massive difference to your braking and to the aesthetic look of the bike. So, and finally, when all is said and done, get your bike tested for an engineer's report, because you're going to more than likely get asked for it for the insurance company anyway, and you'll save yourself a lot of grief. It'll be already sitting there waiting for you. Not only that, you will know that your bike is safe to ride on the road. Right guys, now that your bike build is done, you've got your engineer's report and you've got everything else sorted, and your bike is sitting there and all nice and pretty inside in the shed, it's not time to be thinking about another build. There's always room for bikes inside in sheds. So guys, I hope this helps you. This is my take on bike building. It's not necessarily anybody else's. I kind of have an oddball way of doing things, but it works for me. No guarantee it's going to work for you. I hope it helps, I really do. It's been nice making this video, and thanks very much guys. See you later, bye bye.